some of you might have heard of us, but for those of you who haven't, we were founded in 1998, so we were one of the first design consultancies, or we were the first design consultancy, UX design consultancy in Ireland. And in fact, we were one of the first in Europe. And that gave us a great opportunity to work on an international stage. So we've worked all over the world on research and design projects, typically solving complex problems. However, a more recent project that we've worked on was a social needs project, and it was part of our Design Fix programme, and it was the future vision of migrant healthcare. I'm going to start this story by introducing you to John. John is a UX designer in front end, but he also has a big heart. He's involved in an awful lot of social needs projects outside of work. Front End is primarily a commercial company. We've toyed with the idea of giving back, but we've never really got around to doing it in a big way. We also wanted to engage with the universities and design colleges, to engage with the next generation of designers. So when John came to us with a suggestion of a conceptual project exploring if design could help with the current European migration crisis and engage students in the process, we thought it was a great idea. So we didn't think that UX could save the world, but UX was something that, or design was something that we could offer as help. And we also thought it provides an alternative way of thinking. And an example of this is, I don't know if anybody here is familiar with Cameron Sinclair. He's an architect, a brilliant guy. He does a lot of social needs projects. And he was working on a project in Kenya where he was tasked to build a water well for the village school. And what he realised very quickly was that with the same amount of money, he could build a basketball court, and the roof of which could collect enough water, not only for the school, for the entire village, and could even sell off excess. What's interesting is that what he designed wasn't particularly pretty, because pretty wasn't required in this circumstance. And what I'm trying to illustrate is that design is more than aesthetics, and I'm sure I don't need to tell you that. It can provide an alternative approach to problem solving. So back to the European migration crisis. We approached the IOM, they're the International Organisation for Migration. They're now part of the UN. And they're an intergovernmental organisation funded by taxpayers all over the world. They work on both a macro level, defining policy, and also on a micro level, coordinating responses on the ground. So it was a perfect project for us for this, for the Design Fix. We quickly identified healthcare as a major issue, and luckily Front End has a lot of experience in working in healthcare. And just a bit about the IOM. They're a 10,000 person lean organisation. Every taxpayer's dollar that they get has to work. They're often looking for the cheapest and quickest solution to get on the ground quickly. And they don't always have the luxury of standing back and exploring different ideas. So this collaboration really challenged their ideas on how they were providing service and also how they problem solved within the organisation. Together, we developed a student boot camp, and the student response was phenomenal. We had applicants from all over the world. And the concept was for us to explore ideas in the boot camp, and then Front End and IOM would refine them afterwards. The experience was fantastic, and many of the designs that the students came up with, or the concepts the students came up with, were actually incorporated into the final designs. We developed a number of concepts, however, one in particular stood out, and that was patients often receive medication without much information, and this can lead to unnecessary anxieties, stresses, and uncertainties. And we just very simply came up with a standardised graphic labelling system that provided more information and also addressed issues around literacy and language barriers. And it was a very basic concept, but it really impressed the IOM, and it's the one that they're looking at developing first. But also they were so impressed that they took it to the World Health Organization Global Health Cluster. And this is where emergency healthcare providers come together to agree standards and policies on a worldwide basis. So what started out as a conceptual collaboration for students ends up possibly making huge change. And that's quite powerful to us, and I think it should be to designers in general. Design has the power and potential to create impactful and hopefully lasting change. So with that, I'm just going to show you a video on the future vision of migrant healthcare. Civil war, poverty and terrorism are tearing communities apart worldwide.
65 million people are now displaced globally. This is the highest since World War II.
Last year, the International Organization for Migration actually attended the needs of 5.2 million people.
Even though access to healthcare is a basic human right, because the growing numbers of migrants and refugees, it's becoming increasingly difficult to provide that healthcare on the ground.
Realising the pressure that IOM were under, Front End volunteered to conceptualise a future vision for migrant healthcare.
Earlier this year, we approached the top design colleges, and what we wanted to do was to conceptualise ideas and come up with solutions for the challenges that the IOM were facing.
We had a phenomenal response. So we had applicants from all over the world who wanted to come to Front End and get engaged with this social needs project.
Research is huge. It's very, very important for informing design. Without it, you're designing in a vacuum. Kamal, who was a refugee who had recently completed the journey, spoke to us and the students to help us in the project.
If we think these people is like Irish people, we cannot say it like this. There are so many different, they don't have information, they don't have knowledge of language, they don't know what they have to do.
Well, it was a great experience to actually meet and hear his story. It really puts things in perspective for when you're creating this kind of stuff.
It's one thing to read about it, but when you have a person you can actually just picture in your head, it changes just from an international problem to kind of a human problem. Empathy is a big thing in the design process. It's what's their current situation and what makes them want to use it. So the research part is the start of the kind of discovery, the journey.
One of the main issues that we've come across is that a migrant might arrive and get tested for an illness of some sort, but not be around long enough to get the results.
The students explored a whole range of ideas, and what we did is we took the team here at Front End and we worked with the IOM to develop those ideas and to see what was practical. There was a very clear need for a holistic solution and end-to-end service design, so this was the way in which we approached the project.
A lot of what you see is almost like last month's problem, and it's changing all of the time. So some of the things that we were thinking about, oh yeah, these people are in transit and they're going through train stations, and they're not anymore. That's all stopped. And so the problem that we have right now is different from the problem when we planned the project, and it will probably be different in a month's time as well.
Fundamentally, there is a duty to provide the same level of care to people whether they're in camps or they're in transit. Providing that continuity of care, though, that is a real challenge.
As patients move around, their healthcare records often get duplicated. So we looked at a cloud-based solution that would allow you to store their records electronically. As they move to a new station, they could access their records and their test results in their own language, and hopefully this would encourage ill patients to get the tests in the first place. We could use remote video calling to provide healthcare directly to people on the ground. It would be good to get healthcare in your own language from a native or someone close to where you're from, but also it would allow those healthcare professionals who are often very, very busy, but concerned as well, to give a service or give something back, but without interfering with their jobs.
But movement isn't the only challenge. We're seeing people coming from different countries, which means we have different languages, literacy rates, and hugely different cultures. One obvious area that was in need of improvement was medication labelling.
Well, typically what happens is there's handwritten labels and they're stuck on Ziploc bags. Obviously this is inconsistent, it can cause confusion, so there was a limited amount of information on the labels in the first place. So what we did was we worked with the IOM and we identified a potential solution for creating a standardised labelling system. that aid workers can put onto the Ziploc bags themselves. We looked at important information on medication and we convey that graphically and make sure that more people understood the key messages that were on those labels. Obviously, the medicines didn't go out with leaflets or anything like that, and we knew that a lot of migrants actually had smartphones. So we put information at the bottom that could be easily scanned, and that would integrate with an app that would give the migrant or the patient extended information. I think traditionally people see design as being an add-on, something that you put on to the end of the process, but really design is about fundamentally thinking things through and making things work.
This collaboration has really come in at the opportune time in that we're now able to see how we can continue with providing healthcare to people who need it most. The potential is huge. I would propose certainly, once it's ready, actually testing it out and rolling it out as a pilot.
We hope that it will help everybody who's dealing with these crises lives much easier, just through greater efficiencies, greater communication, greater understanding amongst all players. Good design and human-centred design can make a huge impact. So what was interesting about the project was that a lot of the issues that came up in it we see in the commercial world. When we're doing research in world-class hospitals, whether that be in Ireland, the US, Germany, with patients, doctors, nurses, etc., the same issues come up again and again. There's language barriers, literacy issues, medication labelling, and continuity of care. You might be surprised to know that faxes are the glue that hold many of our healthcare systems together. You might get an MRI scan done in one clinic and the results are faxed to your consultant because email is considered too insecure. You'd assume systems talk to each other. No, often hospitals will actually procure systems that don't integrate, and that's hardly what you call cutting edge. What's different in the migrant situation is that you're dealing with a crisis, there's a great amount of urgency, and you're dealing with very, very vulnerable people. And this raises the stakes, so IOM have to act quickly. Also for IOM, in order to effect real change, they need to create small, well thought through, meaningful approaches that can grow and scale. So rather than looking at an electronic health record that integrated with multiple countries' healthcare systems, we looked at EHR Lite, which was a self-contained healthcare record that resides with the migrant, albeit in the cloud. Another aspect in order for IOM to make these ideas real, they had to get buy-in from multiple governments. So these governments want to see evidence of real benefits, and that could be either cost savings, effectiveness, efficiencies, whatever. So we needed to get initiatives out there. We need to demonstrate benefits and then share these success stories. And I think mainstream healthcare could learn an awful lot from this. Just to finish up, the Future Vision of Migrant Healthcare was last year's Design Fix project. We've just launched this year's Design Fix project, and it was prompted by the growth in anti-establishment populism, which we have seen here in the UK, etc. And we were basically looking at how disaffected citizens can better engage with their governments. We produced a white paper, and this was exploring design principles of creating effective civic dialogue, and it included some concepts, design concepts that use these design principles, and you can look at that by going to www.frontend.com/engage. So just to finish up, can UX change the world? I don't know, maybe it's a bit too ambitious, but from working on these projects and from seeing some of the projects today, I think bit by bit maybe we can. But more importantly, as Cameron Sinclair might say, what we really need to do is to design like we give a damn. Thank you.